today, and as Richard mentioned last week, this briefing has been brought forward. The Indigenous biodiversity strategy has been through a process over the last 18 months with council, and it is going out for consultation, which starts next week. And so we wanted to make sure that you were all informed and understood what's in that strategy and what the process has been before that hits the public. We've got our manager strategy back, Hillary, and also I'm very pleased to introduce Shay Vanderhoek, who is one of our senior strategy advisors, who has led the work on the biodiversity strategy and will be leading the briefing today. We've also got Libby Caldwell, manager environmental implementation, in the back, and I think Pete Stevenson might be there as well, team leader. Pete Ravenscroft, team leader in the science team, who have also contributed to this process. So I'll hand over to you, Shay.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Tēnā koutou I kai here. He mihi nui ki a koutou. Ko Shay Vanderhoek taku ingoa. As Amanda said, I'm Shay from the strategy team. So I'm really looking forward to working with you this term. It's very exciting and fantastic to be kicking this off with an overview of the draft OSC Indigenous Biodiversity Strategy, as Amanda will be seeking public feedback from next Monday. And yeah, I just thought I should say that Libby and Pete being in the room here is testament to the team effort that this has been. I could never have done this without their support and the wider OSC team's support. And if we get any questions around their areas of expertise, implementation, biosecurity, catchment action planning, all of those sorts of things, and this science knowledge base, they'll be able to do a better job of answering some of them. Today we'll cover the Indigenous biodiversity in Otago, what we mean by that, why we need a strategy, why we're doing a new strategy, and the process we've taken to developing that so far. And then we'll cover what's different about the new draft strategy and the next steps from there. Fabulous. So what do we mean by Indigenous biodiversity in Otago? From the cheeky care of the Southern Alps to the kelp forests off our coasts, we're talking about the plants, animals, and fungi that occur here naturally, their habitats, and the relationship between them. Otago communities rely on Indigenous biodiversity and value it for its own sake, for our identity, for our tourism brand, and as part of the natural systems that provide us with clean water, fertile soil, climate regulation, and protection from floods and erosion. And Indigenous biodiversity is fundamental to mana whenua who are connected to it by whakapapa or genealogy, and that leads to their kaitiaki guardianship role. So why do we need a strategy? So looking after those plants, animals, and fungi, the ones that are naturally found here, and managing the pests that put pressure on them is part of our job. The Resource Management Act says that regional councils are responsible for maintaining Indigenous biodiversity in their region, and we do this through our regional policy statements, water and coast plans, and through our practical steps like supporting and empowering mana whenua, community groups, landowners, and businesses. The Biosecurity Act says that we have a leadership role in pest management within the region, and we do this by working with community groups, or community, to plan how pests will be managed, and we'll make rules about pests and coordinating and collaborating with others to manage them. And pests have a significant impact on biodiversity. So, with these two roles, we need a clear approach to conducting both of these pieces of our role. And just a note that with this draft strategy that we're talking about today, it won't create new rules. It's a strategic document, and it does not include budgets or work plans because we'll have an annual plan and a long-term plan process to deal with that. Okay, so the reason number two why we need a strategy is that there's a whole lot of other people already involved, and many of them with roles. City and district councils share the role of maintaining Indigenous biodiversity in their patch, and they do that through their controlling land use and development. And of course, they take other practical steps too. The Department of Conservation also has a role to play. They're responsible for conservation land and waters, so the national parks, reserves, marine reserves. And those are places where a great deal of biodiversity is found. They also provide legal protection to wildlife through the Wildlife Act and have an advocacy role. And they do a whole lot of work with threatened species too. Mana whenua have a kaitaki role for Indigenous biodiversity, as we've already covered. And agencies, landowners and others have responsibilities for managing pests on their place. And there's a whole lot of other agencies that aren't as strong examples, but are definitely involved. So MPI leads the biosecurity system, fairly important piece of the puzzle. Lynn's Ministry for the Environment, obviously, and Fish and Game also have roles to play. And I think probably the point of this slide is that we all have different and overlapping roles. And so we need to be, as ORC, clear about the space we'll occupy, what role we'll take. So reason number 3 why we need a strategy is that on top of all those role players, our communities are already taking a whole lot of action to look after Indigenous biodiversity. There are many regions, many projects across the region led by mana whenua, community groups, councils and agencies. And some of those are pretty significant. A few of you in the room are very familiar with them. And many individuals, landowners and farms and businesses are already taking action at their place and across their operations. And that's something we can be quite proud of as a region, I think. So ORC needs to be able to complement that strong sector and focus on what we can do, what we can add to that picture. So reason number 4, and the final reason I've got on the slides, is that despite all of those efforts, and they're fairly significant, Otago's Indigenous biodiversity isn't doing so well. So for example, 97% of our lizards, 42% of our plants, and 61% of our birds are now threatened or at risk with regional extinction. And many ecosystem types only survive a fraction of their pre-human extent. And this is a result of pressures like invasive pests, habitat loss, pollution and climate change. And it has a clear economic, cultural and social cost to all those things that we rely on biodiversity for. So it's good that we've been working to address this. We've been guided by our current biodiversity strategy from 2018 and our current biosecurity strategy from 2019, but there's still work to do. So why are we doing a new strategy? Yeah, so there's more work to do, but a lot has changed since we adopted those last strategies. Those strategies and our choices since then have moved us forward, providing a strong foundation for us now. We have much better knowledge of Otago's Indigenous biodiversity. We have stronger relationships and we've been building trust as ORC. We've built our strengths in partnering, mana whenua, collaborating with other players and coordinating responses to pests. And we support and empower communities, landowners and businesses already through things like Eco Fund, catchment advisors, catchment action planning. We've also had Jobs for Nature, central government job stimulus that created momentum in the region that we can build on. And it also highlighted the ambition that exists in Otago, I think. Since 2018, we've also had a new national biodiversity strategy, Te Maunga Te Tau, and the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity has been gazetted. And they were developed through extensive work with mana whenua, industry, communities, and local government up and down the country, so are well put together documents. And yeah, on top of all of that, we made a commitment to revising the strategy and the current long-term plan. So how did we get here? So the journey so far, as I've said, it was a real team effort across ORC. We partnered with Mana Whenua. We worked closely with the city and district councils, the Department of Conservation, as some of those other role holders. We worked to align to the national strategy and policy, and we also analysed a bunch of the submissions we've received from the public so that we made sure we heard what they had already told us. So we did our research. We had good guidance and direction from council, and we pulled together the existing vision and goals for Indigenous biodiversity and Otago across the various documents. After that, we had 44 meetings with key stakeholders. That was across the region and from around the country too, because there's plenty of interest from around the country with interest in Otago. And we gathered those insights and took that forward into drafting, developing the draft, which was endorsed by council on 25th of June. So here's the slide of who we spoke to. Forgive me, it's a busy slide. Probably reflects the busy time that it was getting around all these great people. And probably, yeah, just keen to give you a flavour of what they said. I think everyone had a strong commitment to looking after Indigenous biodiversity. I think that was really striking. And the majority were already taking action. It was quite inspiring to see how much action is already happening. Most suggested that we focus on enabling Mana Whenua as kaitiaki and empowering communities, landowners and businesses as stewards as being a key approach. Everyone wanted to know where their actions would have the most impact. Most suggested that we should draw on the multiple knowledge systems, so Ngāti Rako Māori, science and local knowledge. The majority said we should make it easy to get the knowledge, support and skills needed to have a positive impact. Everyone saw failure and catchment action plans. Many talked about the impact of pests and the importance of coordination between various agencies, landowners and communities. And most emphasised the need for increased investment and innovation. And a few noted the potential value of incentives and supporting landowners to take action. Okay. So with all that, so how have councillors been involved to date? So really through council committee and the reference group, council provided direction for the strategy development and established a reference group of councillors and Mana Whenua to guide the strategy draft. And that was after a discussion at Mana to Mana. Council's Environment Strategy and Policy Committee had 3 strategy workshops, so some of you are probably quite sick of hearing me say some of the things I've just said earlier. And councillors and Mana Whenua discussed the draft at Mana to Mana before council endorsed the draft for public feedback, as I said earlier. Some of the things we heard along the way were that we should bring together biodiversity and biosecurity, because biosecurity is such a big impact on biodiversity, that we should focus on RSC's role in the mix, partnering with Mana Whenua and collaborating with other councils and agencies. That actually is a smart move to align to the existing vision and aspirations from the various documents that were prepared with between our councillors, the community and Mana Whenua. Yeah, a focus on empowering communities, private landowners and other organisations to do the good work was a smart move, and that we really needed to address that overlapping roles piece with the other agencies. So it was really clear why and where ORC would be involved. Again, making the most of those knowledge systems, exploring things like incentives and what our role is in investment. And for innovation, really looking to get innovators to target some of the tools that they're creating towards some of the issues for the region, so we can make the most of that, and for ourselves, innovating in the way that we work with our communities, like through things like catchment action plans. Yeah, I have not all my notes up. Okay. So what's different about the new draft? So we'll be working to our strengths, playing the part that only we can play. The draft sees us enabling mana whenuas, kaitiaki, and empowering our communities as stewards by applying our knowledge to focus action where it'll make the biggest difference, using our strengths and relationships to empower our communities and others to take action, and providing leadership so that everyone's working to their strengths and avoiding doubling up or leaving gaps. So that's really around those multiple different roles and the overlaps and complexity there. And the idea there is greater efficiency and impact. And finally, to promote investment and innovation where it's going to make the biggest difference. And you have that in front of you. It was on an A3, it's now on an A4. So hopefully it's a bit easier to get into. And yeah, feel free to have a peruse, and we're happy to take questions on that in a minute. So what comes next? We'll be going out for public feedback, as we said, from the 3rd to the 30th of November. And that'll involve advertising in local newspapers, newsletters, online, via social media. And we've also invited key stakeholders to provide feedback and suggested that they get the message out to their contacts to do the same. So then we'll be sending people to a webpage with the draft and feedback form. Probably a good point to make is that this is feedback, not a formal legal consultation like we would do under the RMA, with submissions and hearings. So after we get all of that back, hopefully we get plenty of feedback responses. We'll be analysing that feedback and make any changes. We'll be getting the guidance of the Biodiversity Strategy Reference Group to do that. Then we'll be reporting back to Council early in 2026 and looking to then finalise the strategy, bringing it back to Council for adoption by 30th of June 2026 at the latest, hopefully. And then point 5, it's a lot sitting underneath the one bullet point there. After that, the real work begins implementing the strategy, and that'll be work across ORC teams. Strategy team will be supporting them to align their work plans to the strategy. And we've mapped this out in the strategy itself in Appendix 3 to start off within the existing work plans so we can get momentum happening already over the first couple of years before aligning more seriously into the period of the next long-term plan. So that's how we'll come back to you to figure out what the resourcing looks like for that. Yeah, we've got some work underway to make sure that that's well integrated with all the different work plans across ORC and makes best use of the resources. I think the work that we've done internally already puts us in a good place to do that. All right, enough from me. I'm quite sick of the sound of my voice. Any questions on that?
Thanks, Shay. Well presented. Hey, can I just get clarity on the page 4? Agencies, landowners, and others have responsibilities for managing pests on their base. Are there laws? Are there rules? You know, I was being curious about. You know, can people be told off and or fined, or is there punitive penalties that can be imposed on people that don't do stuff? Obviously, it's not how you want to do stuff, but I just never quite got my head around. I mean, managing pests, you can go and feed them, right? And that's one way of managing a possum, or you can obviously not feed it, But what's the actual rules around all this stuff?
Yeah, really great question. So I'll kick off, but I would defer to Libby for the detail probably, who is environmental implementation manager and leads the team involved in biosecurity. So probably starting with the Biosecurity Act, that empowers us to take that leadership role, but it also empowers us to create a regional pest management plan, which defines which animal species pests and then how they're going to be managed, and that can include rules around them, and that would apply to private land or the agency land. And then further to fleshing out that in a bit more detail, probably over to you, Libby.
Yeah, thanks, Shay. Hello everyone, I'm Libby Caldwell, I'm the manager of the environmental implementation team. So Shay pretty much covered it off. So there's the Biosecurity Act, and then Otago have a regional pest management plan which has objectives and rules in it for specific pests, but not for every pest that there is in the world. We are also reviewing our pest plan at the moment, so you'll get a briefing on that shortly in the next few weeks. So yeah, there's rules for specific pests, and we can send you a link to the regional pest management plan if that is used. Do you like that?
I think I've got it, but yes, thank you. Yeah.
And just within that, there's a range of tools that we can use in terms of achieving compliance, and that always starts with an education first approach through to the various other tools such as notices, directions, and those sort of things. But very different approach to compliance in terms of the tools compared to your RMA compliance. So yeah, a little bit of a different base, but still a range of tools that we can use, but always wanting to start with the education approach, but our community is expecting us to take more formal actions in that compliance space for biosecurity.
Yeah, understandable, thank you. And on that same page, we need to be clear about the space we will occupy. Are you clear in your own mind what space you think we should be occupying? Can you enunciate that?
I think yes.
I see the document.
Yes.
Yeah, but in terms of, there's obviously rules, there's education, where's the greatest impact going to be coming from, in your opinion, in terms of the place to occupy from an RRC point of view?
Yeah, really good question. I think we obviously have a role to fulfill under various legislation, so we'll be needing to do things like have a regional pest management plan. But I think this lays out really taking that role of where's action actually going to have the biggest benefit, and supporting the rest of the strong sector to know where that is from the knowledge that we have, and then empowering people to take action on that. And I think within that, we probably should note that that includes things like bringing people together to come up with community-led visions, and then solving some of those challenges together, like through a catchment action plan, but also by coordinating biosecurity action against pests, and things like that. So yeah, I think probably playing that connector of where are we going to have the biggest impact, sitting in that empowering space, and making sure we deliver on the government's requirements around rules and regulations. Yeah.
Thank you, Shay. I'm going to pull you up on page 6 of the presentation and the statement, which I don't think is in the strategy, but I just want to check it. Maybe it is, and I missed it when we had it. And that's the example of 97% of our lizards and 42% of our plants, so on. While many ecosystem types survive at only a fraction of their pre-human extent, that isn't our ambition, and it's an odd phrase. Or is it our? I just think it's inflammatory almost to think that that's the standard that we're looking at.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's just the statement of the current situation.
That's right. And so in that context of naturalised flows and what it's done, that perception of being able to naturalise a flow, that context is important. So yeah.
So I think the key thing there is it's not in the document anywhere as an aspiration. It's a statement on the our biodiversity. It's a fact. But nowhere in there, you're right, Kate, nowhere in there has council ever articulated that one of the goals is to achieve pre.
Yeah.
So but it is a fact.
Okay.
The science will be able to tell us that. But it is not captured as a stated goal.
They're just thank you for just checking that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Andy, only I think that since we've done this, there's been quite a lot of development with Ecos at least doing biodiversity credits. What are we doing alongside of this to understand what that market is and how it's developing? Because informing the community when they're submitting on this about, it's a relatively new space, and I don't think there's many biodiversity credits systems in there. You talk about the investment, but and sort of giving a direction of how that is going and what it's looking like would be really interesting. And keeping people informed. Are there many existing investment?
I mean, yeah, so it's a smart question. I think obviously the government has had a work program around biodiversity credits, so they're obviously doing some work in the space, and we're watching that carefully. And part of that broader piece, there's a handful of credit systems that are emerging, but they're largely around assurance that things are actually being delivered. And yes, there's different moving parts to probably the biodiversity credit system, and the government's sort of taking a regulatory position. Probably best to read the government's line on that, to be fair. And then there's the credit systems. Probably a place that we can sit is in actually we understand what's going on to some degree, what's going on with biodiversity in this region, and so we could say, actually, if you're going to invest, please invest somewhere that's going to be really impactful and have a good benefit for Otago. So that's really what that's setting out and getting the system right on the page there.
So ECOS is looking for projects at the moment. Have we got any in mind from this that we could be encouraging people to apply for?
Probably the best answer is no at the moment. Yeah, good question to ask.
Richard.
Hilary, earlier today you talked about achieving outcomes and being able to measure those and show them in a better way than we have, I suppose. So how would you see the implementation going to the outcomes, and where would, sorry, difficult question, I know, but the next bit is, where would you see the responsibility for defining what the outcomes are when we have catchment action planning, etc., for community led approaches? So would it develop organically over time, or what does the council have a responsibility to set outcomes? How does that work, do you think?
So in the interest of being efficient, when we're working on this outcomes report, it's actually myself and Shay that are working on that broader organisation outcomes report, and we've taken focus areas each to work on, and I gifted Shay the environment focus area where he's going to be trawling through reams and reams and reams of data that we have ourselves or we have access to from other agencies about what is going on out there in terms of water, biodiversity, and all those other spheres. And one of the reasons why I gifted Shay that very tricky section to work on is because the same measures and metrics would be used to measure the effectiveness of this biodiversity strategy. I wouldn't want to try and speak to the work that's happening at the ICM level, because I think that team can speak to that, but my understanding is they're also looking at outcomes, and they're looking at outcome indicators, and a lot of that data is very specific, very localized, and very community generated, and those communities themselves deciding, what good looks like in their more localized areas. The work that we're doing for the organisational outcomes report is more at the more dish. I think we haven't quite figured out how to break it down yet. We might give some district pictures, but certainly the regional overview. So it's not the same level of granularity.
I kind of wonder if that talks to the point around what space to occupy, and if there's a setting standards for consistency of information, because there is so many, working with conservation groups as I have been, there's so much inconsistency between the metrics of what impact's being done. Often it's the effort that goes in is measured, but the outcomes are not. And I don't know if that's as well articulated in here as it possibly could be in terms of creating a measuring tool or something that's sort of district wide as a way to provide a bit of a leadership opportunity there for the regional council to say, hey, look, this is not just good practice in terms of what you do, but this is good practice in terms of how it's measured. And then, I know we do that for water sampling, for example, but that might be different for measuring the survivability of a species or the growth of a native fauna.
Really,
Sorry.
really awesome area to talk about. I think where I start with this is that there's an awful lot of great work happening out there by community groups, by voluntary organisations, by individual landowners, and of course by a bit more more professionalised groups too. Especially when we come to volunteer space and where people are putting resource in from their farming system or wherever they're at, it's challenging to ask them to do one more thing, right? But I think it is key because we want to be able to tell the story of we did all this great work, but what impact did we actually have? So I guess I'm just tautakuing what you said, Matt. So the strategy does have a piece within focusing action, which is all about monitoring the outcomes and making sure we take that forward into continuously improving what we're doing. So if we're out there doing things, say to control pigs or whatever it is, and it's not working, and we're not seeing the benefits, those forests are getting plowed up with pigs or etc., then we should switch it up and see what we can do instead. So hoping to take that through, and if we get some of that innovation happening in the region, or more of that innovation happening in the region, sort of targeting towards those sorts of things as well.
A couple of things. The opportunity for feedback from the wider community is probably to me the most significant aspect of this, and I'm hoping that we have some really good strategies in place to try and get best of that, because it's great to have that great big group of stakeholders that are always in. Always got some wise words, but it's those people that are probably, did I say, part of those volunteer groups, or don't know enough that they might want to be part of those groups, and I'm hoping you'll be able to tell me we've got some good strategies to try and get them involved and give us some good feedback, because without that, it's probably just another strategy that people don't understand, and I think they need to understand it.
That's great to hear you say that. Yes, and we've done been working really closely with the comms team to try and design this in a way that will reach as many people as we can. Their newsletter sort of comms channel is a really cool piece of work that I've not seen anywhere else, that I've worked at least. And obviously getting it out online will have a bit of reach. So yeah, we're aiming to get as far as we can with it, raise the awareness, and we've built the feedback so that as you work through, you kind of get a sense of what's in the strategy. So
there'll be some sort of online type.
It is, yeah.
So like a Let's Talk platform type thing.
Yeah, it'll be a web page that sort of explains what we're talking about. Gives a link to the strategy, but then there's a feedback sort of survey form and jot form, I think.
And my other question was around, following up to what Matt was saying about the implementation. So I'd imagine that the strategy, once it's finalised and being implemented, we can probably expect to see reasonably some changes made to the pest management strategy, pest management plan, those sort of things. I've seen some
yeah, so the hope would be that it will influence how we operate, so across the business.
And in general, we're hoping to line things up. So we are doing a strategy now, and then we've had direction from previous council to bring forward a review of our regional pest management plan. But also we are waiting for changes to come through from the government to the Biosecurity Act. So if we get our sequencing right, we'll have our strategy, we'll have changes to the Biosecurity Act, and then we'll have changes to our regional pest management plan, and that'll all operate in conjunction with each other. That's the ideal world, and that's what we're aiming for. So if we get the strategy right, all of that feedback and input can then help inform the development of our regional pest management plan where appropriate.
I'm sure it's not if, it's when we get the strategy right.
Yeah.
It's what's important for someone else to back it up. Yeah, thank you.
More questions? We'll make
there's mention of I'll say working group, but that's not the right word. The reference group. So I guess that's got to be reconstituted or in some way, shape or form, or did we get the people back that are already on it?
It'll have to be even if they are,
Yeah.
it will still have to be revisited by the team.
Yeah.
So it'll be one of your long list of groups that will need to be
Oh, okay.
have
Two
names
and a
put
half
against.
pages so far.
And a big thanks to Andrew, for your involvement in that one so far, yeah.
I wasn't alone.
It's a good group.
That's the end of the questions, then that's actually the end of the day in terms of formal briefings. So thanks everyone for your attendance and thanks to all the staff who have carried out the briefings and been flexible in their timing so we could get through the day a little bit quicker and give you a few hours back. So we are back for the next formal part of induction. Is Tuesday morning at Otako Marae, but anything that has piqued your interest or a question that you think of later that you didn't ask during any of the briefings today, feel free to email it through to myself and I'll get it to the right general manager or staff member to make sure that you can get a response. So a lot of information today, so don't hesitate to reach out if there's things you think about after the fact that you wish you'd asked, and we'll make sure we fill those gaps where otherwise.
If we could, when we finish this meeting, stay in the room, councillors, for a week.
Yep. Yeah,
debrief.
you're welcome to have the room. Yeah, yep. So we'll close. Jack will finish the. We'll shut the system down.